Hamikdash, we have Avodas HaKarbonos. We're now going to explain that the Avodah, the main thing in the Beis Hamikdash was Karbonos. There were a lot of things going on in the Beis Hamikdash. We need a menorah. They had a shulchan. Then on the shulchan there was the 12 breads. There was another mizbeah that they had ketores, the incense. There was all different vessels in the mizbeah, and there was the singing of the Levium, and the music that they played, and the vocal singing, and all sorts of chambers for different functions. But the main avodah in the Beis Hamikdash is karbonos. In fact, this is a subject in itself, but there's a difference of opinion between, again, the Rambam and Ramban, which is the main purpose of the Beis Hamikdash. According to the Ramban, and according to the Rambam, of course, we all know the main purpose is for the Shekhinah to be there. Thank you very much. If you can give it out, I appreciate it.
It's fine.
No? Yeah. Okay. The main purpose is that, but there's a machlekes. Is the main purpose that the Shekhinah should just dwell there, or the main purpose is to bring sacrifices? But even according to those that say the main purpose is the Shekhinah should dwell there, but how was it dwell? Through the sacrifices. So the primary avodah of the Beis Hamikdash was karbonos. So even though you take a behema and you shecht it, we know that bringing the carbon is one of the most difficult things that people don't understand. Why would Hashem want us to take an animal, slaughter the animal on the mizbeach? I mean, unfortunately, there are people that make a big mistake when you talk about karbonos and they say, I can't understand, how could the Torah allow such a thing? This was more like the paganism, to take an animal and put it on a fire. So, of course, in Judaism, there's no such thing as taking a live animal and putting it on a fire. The animal is slaughtered, good morning, shechita, just like we do it today. But instead of cooking it in a pot, when it comes to cooking the meat, we put it on a mizbeach. But why is this something so special? Even though there might be reasons given here and there, but the Rambam writes in his book of Halacha that this is one of those things that are chukim, that we don't understand. It's beyond understanding. And I once had a student there that was giving me an argument because her father sent her a book. It was actually in Hebrew, written by some Israeli writer who was, I guess, Rumish. And he was arguing that when Mashiach comes, there won't be any more sacrifices because it's such a thing which is such not a nice thing. And he wrote this idea that, that there's a source, that the reason why Hashem allowed us to make karbonos because we lived amongst the nations of the world and they brought sacrifices. So therefore, we were in Mitzrayim, we wouldn't be able to live without it. So Hashem had to tell us to do karbonos, which means bringing a carbon is really something which is cruel. But because we live amongst the nations and we had a sort of, we couldn't get unused to it, so Hashem told us to do the same thing. There is such a source, but that source is written for people who have no deeper understanding of Torah, or people are very involved with other religions, and that helps them relate to it in some way. But we see from the beginning, Adam Rishon brought a carbon, Noach brought a carbon, and the carbonos are as ancient as the creation. And not only that, how could someone think that bringing a carbon, which was such a major part of Jewish life in the holiest place in the world, was just because the non-Jews did it, so we couldn't, and we lived among them, so we also had to do it. It's inconceivable for a normal mind to make peace with such a thought. So the Rambam writes it's actually one of the chukim. It's one of the things which we can't understand. But nevertheless, the Rambam also writes that even chukim, we should make an effort as much as possible to try to understand something, what's behind it. So this Maimer is explaining a little bit about Chassidus, what is behind bringing a carbon. Really, it's an avodah ruchnis. And this is, where does this express itself? That bringing a carbon was really a spiritual avodah. We see this by the participation of the Kahanim and the Levium, that they were the ones who were involved in bringing the korban, and especially the Levium, the Shiram, the Zimram, Beis Avos HaKorban. They were supposed to sing verbally, vocally, and play instruments while the korban was brought. Because all this was about spiritual, emotional connection to Hashem, but it was done through the korban. This is Avodah Ruchnis. So what is the Avodah of korban? In fact, now we have no Beis HaMikdash, but every Yid has a Beis HaMikdash in his heart. So even though we don't have the physical bringing a korban, but the spiritual idea of korban, we can all practice on a personal level. So I was going to explain that. What is the korban? In the Avodah of a Yid, on a personal level, sin, korban. That's the sheet that I gave you. So the third Chumash is called Vayikra, and in some places it's referred to as Leviticus, because it's all about the Avodah of the Kahanim and the Leviim in the Beis Hamikdash. So he's going to explain the part in the Maimon. I say underline the words. This right away begins with these words: "Speak to Bnei Yisrael and tell them, Adam ki yakim mikem korban avayim." If a person amongst you would want to bring a korban to Hashem, you can bring the korban min abehema, min abakar, min atzayin, from the cattle, from the sheep. The krivas korban. In other words, you can't just take any animal, only from these animals. And later he'll say, these korbanos are these animals. This korban are different animals. But generally, it's cattle and sheep and goats. When we look at this pasuk, there's a question. If the intent of this pasuk was just to let us know the laws of bringing a korban, then the wording should have been different. It should have said, in other words, what it's saying is, if a person amongst you wants to bring a korban, so in Hebrew it should have read, Adam mikem ki yaakov korban Hashem, not Adam ki yaakov mikem. The word mikem doesn't belong later; it belongs earlier. One of you want to bring a korban. If you want to bring a korban, so this and this should be the laws how to bring a korban. What does he say? Adam ki yaakov mikem. It's known. This question is found in the Maimer in the Kuti Torah, which is written by the Alter Rebbe, and it's one of the first Maimarim that when young Bachrim start learning Maimarim, and Bachrim boys, when they become Bar Mitzvah, they start already learning Tanya. But Maimarim comes a little bit later. One of the first Maimarim they learn is this Maimer called Adam Ki Yaakov Mikem, from the Alter Rebbe and the Kuti Torah, and this is based on that Maimer. So it's known that the Kavanah is, what does it mean? He should go to the fire. He's not only telling them how to bring a korban, the physical korban, but he's also coming to tell us, how do we bring a korban on a personal level, in a spiritual sense? What does it mean internally bringing a korban? And that's what he means when it says Adam ki yaakov. It means like this: Adam, a person, when he wants to be, the word Yaakov means to sacrifice. But Yaakov in Hebrew also means close, like Karev. Karev means closeness. And Yaakov is like a verb. If a person wants to become close to godliness, he brings that closeness from himself. To become close to Hashem is something which comes from you and from within you. You do it, and it's known, korbanos, meaning kiruv, akreiches, v'akushim, that the holding of a korban, even on a physical level, even though physically what you're doing is you're sacrificing an animal, but what it does spiritually, it's the purpose is to bring closer all our potentials and all our talents that we have should come closer and be more directed to Hashem. So therefore, on a personal level, what he's saying is, how do I become closer to Hashem? That depends on something which is within me. And this is what he explains. This guy of the cause, first wants to become close to the godliness, whom he can. What does it mean? It's from you. It depends on you. The al yomer adam, a person shouldn't say, of course, how can I come close to godliness? Me and godliness. I'm so coarse. I'm so far. There's no way that I can come close to godliness. In other words, the more I understand the greatness of Hashem, and the more I understand the greatness of godliness, the more I feel how distant I am. And if I'm so distant, I can't come close to godliness. Especially if a person recognizes where he's really holding spiritually, that spiritually he's in a low place. And he knows that his soul is soiled, is not clean with a lot of undesirable, inappropriate things. Even if I wouldn't do Averas, just who I am, a human being, an ordinary human being. I'm not a Navi, I'm not a tzaddik, a regular guy. I'm so far from godliness, especially when he thinks about the things that he did. That makes him even further. Is as far as you can be from godliness. How can I come close to godliness? That's what I would think. So the pasuk says, "Mikem." Don't think that, because the truth is, it depends on you. You could. Every person could. Page 36. Every single yid could say. This is from a Gemara, a Maimar Chazal, not a Gemara, it's a Medrash. Every yid could say, Masa Yagiu Maisai LeMaisei Avosei Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov. Every yid can say, when will my actions become similar to the actions of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? So therefore, no Jew can say, I'm an exception. I can't. And in fact, there are no limitations regarding this subject. Every person is included. There's nothing in the world that can block and prevent the yid from coming close to godliness. All depends on me. Nothing could prevent the yid from rising and reaching and becoming close to godliness. And there's a principle, a rule, that Hashem doesn't come to his creation with demands that are more than we can handle, which means the mere fact that Hashem asks me to do something, that in itself is an indication that I can do it. Otherwise, he would never ask me to do it. The Medrash says that we always compare Hashem to a king of flesh and blood. Kings, they have all the money in the world, they have all the servants in the world. When they want to get things done, for them it's nothing. So for them, when they ask people to do something, they don't even think who this person is, what his potential is, what his circumstances are, what he could do, what he can do. They just want you to do something. They don't even think about that. Hashem is higher and greater and more infinite than anything else in the world. But at the same time, he knows exactly, precisely how much strength I have or what my capacity is. And therefore, when he asks me to do something, he'll only ask me if I'm capable to do it. He's not going to ask me to do something which is beyond my capabilities. So the mere fact that Hashem asks me is clear indication that he wants me to do it. And Chassidus adds another point in other places, that not only it's an indication, but this in itself is an empowerment. When Hashem asks someone to do something, that in itself empowers the person that he could do it. There's a story that was publicized by the person, so it's not something which is inappropriate, but I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, Rebbetzin Gorelik. Rabbi Gorelik and Rebbetzin Gorelik, one of the first shluchim that went out they went to Italy. They were there for many years, almost until just a few years ago. And all these places where people went, the first shluchim, one went to Morocco, there was a Matasel family, and one went to Italy, and people went to different places. And now we see they built a whole community there. But at the time, there were not that many people. It was very difficult. And she wrote the Rebbe that she doesn't think that she is really capable of doing the job. The Rebbe wrote back, that means that you're saying that the one who sent you made a mistake and didn't evaluate correctly who you are and what you can do. So she wouldn't say that. So she changed her mind. In other words, the Rebbe is saying, if I sent you, I would not have sent you had I not known that you're capable to do the job.
Wow. That changed things?
That changed things, yes.
Wow.
And they were very successful.
Amazing.
So the Eibush Kiyisa b'Medrash Rabbah. The Eibush says in Medrash Rabbah, Kishani mevakesh, when I ask for something, ein mevakesh lefi kaichi. I don't ask according to my power, Hashem's power, like the kings of flesh. When they make demands, they judge by themselves. For me, it's no big deal, so it's no big deal for you. But the Eibush says, no, I ask you to do things, it's according to your ability. According to each individual person. It says when the Eibush rewards us, he rewards us according to his capability. When he asks us to do something, it's according to our capability. But when he rewards us, that he does according to his capability. I think this is also alluded to in these words. Means through the mere fact that Hashem asks us to do it, every person could rise and reach to the highest levels. This is what it means, Adam Ki Akriv. It's not only talking about the physical animal, but in order for a person to become close to God, and that's what it means. You should bring the carbon to Hashem from you. It says you should bring a sacrifice from you. What does it mean from you? The literal meaning from amongst you. But the deeper meaning is no, from you. You yourself are that carbon. And Chas v'Shalom doesn't mean carbon in the literal sense. It means the closeness. You are the one who can bring that closeness. This is not only about a physical animal. It means from you. From the animal means the animal that's in our hearts. Being that every yid has the animal soul, or nefesh habahamis, and the nefesh halikis is to begin with close to Hashem. But how do I bring my nefesh habahamis, which is a behemoth, how do we bring him to come close to Hashem? And then it says, if you want to bring a carbon for Hashem, you have to bring it from the cattle and from the sheep. What does that mean? Turn the page to 38. The fact that the Torah says certain karbanos is from a cow, an ox, certain things is a goat, certain things is sheep, certain things is a pigeon, different kind of animals. This is alluding to the different kinds of nefesh habahamis. In other words, there's a whole zoo of nefesh habahamis. It's not just one kind of nefesh habahamis. Different kinds of nefesh habahamis. And each nefesh habahamis has to be dealt with accordingly. You can't deal with this nefesh habahamis like you deal with a different nefesh habahamis. Hey, but proti, but the is the yeshnam and nefesh habahamis. You do on your numbers as it's known from other sources. What this means, for example, the eined they may find a berur mecholechad vechad. Just like we understand that if you want to guide someone and help someone improve, become a better person, the approach is not every single person the same. Everybody's different. Some people you have to be strong with them. Some people you have to be soft with them. Some people you have to guide them more. Some people you have to do the opposite, let them do more independently themselves. It depends who, what, when, where, and how. One of the biggest mistakes that certain educators make is that they think there's one size that fits all, And now in today's world, this has become more and more popular, getting small little schools, and what do they call these schools where the kids sort of do their own thing? What are they called? Montessori kind of teaching. But in the Torah world also, little yeshiva are opening up all over the place because people realize that in the big schools, everybody is like one size fits all, and one size doesn't fit all. And therefore you have to deal with each child separately. So in Avodah, every Nefesh Bahamis is different, and you have to deal with each Nefesh Bahamis differently. Yes, the Nefesh Bahamis, for example, there's a Nefesh Bahamis that's a Sher Nagach. The difference between an ox and sheep are soft, gentle little animals, and an ox is aggressive and it gores. So therefore, if this has this nature, that has that nature, you can't deal with both of them the same way. You have to deal with each one accordingly. So an ox represents the Nefesh Bahamis that has very coarse character traits. Bal midas gasas v'yesa. And it's an animal that gores, meaning that it's aggressive. V'yeshu utzei. And there's another kind of an animal soul that resembles sheep. Shubehemo daka. It's more of a softer kind of an animal. It's not an aggressive animal. Doesn't mean that it's not an animal, but still softer, not aggressive, not so coarse. Upon him in a small, more subtle way. In other words, it could be a person that davens and learns. He's not like passionate about all sorts of physical pleasures, but there's still a Nefesh Bahamis inside. And his Nefesh Bahamis expresses itself in other things, more subtle things. So there are different kinds of Nefesh Bahamis.
Why is it not kosher, right? Like with aggressive, character?
Because it could be reversed. I guess a lion, a snake, these trait animals, you can't change them. These are animals that could be tamed, and they aren't tamed, and we use them, a donkey, a horse, or even an ox. It's useful, you can use it. So, for example, if someone has an Nefesh Bahamis that's soft, gentle, but has little areas where it goes after its physical, materialistic pleasures, you don't deal with it with all that force that you have to deal with an ox that's charging at you.
Encourage like a sheep. It's like the sheep should become like the cow, and the cow should become like the sheep. Why is it like in the home world is like the sheep is nice? You know what I'm saying? The sheep like personality, like be nice to be like like a go-getter.
Yeah, there is an advantage in other words, if a person is aggressive, if it's tamed and guided in the right direction, it could be a tremendous asset.
Yeah.
And so therefore, in some ways, that's even an advantage. Like for example, whatever one spoke about it by Fabrengen, that sometimes you go to speak to a crowd of people, or you walk over to somebody else and you like to put on tefillin, this and that. Some people bark at you. Get away! I'm not interested. Are you Jewish? Yeah. What about tefillin? I'm not interested. Don't bother me. So you think, oh, again, this person talk to another person and smiles. Oh, I'm not interested. They're very calm and cold, which is more difficult, so to speak, or which person has more potential. Dafka, the one who's screaming and shouting, has more potential, because first of all, the mere fact that he gets all worked up is a sign that you touch something. The one that's cold is cold. Cold person you can't get to. And the second thing is, if you do manage to turn things around, this one is going to be passionate about Torah and mitzvahs, and the other person, okay, will be cold. So therefore, yes, aggressiveness and these things could be an advantage, but only if it's going in the right direction. Otherwise, an ox could, God forbid, kill people. So everything needs to be dealt with their way. His name came up a few times lately, but it just comes to my mind again. Rabbi J.J. Hecht. You heard about him, and maybe you've seen some videos. He was a dynamic speaker. I don't know if you ever heard him speak on one of the videos. Dynamite when he spoke, like the building would be shaking, and he spoke from the heart, and he was brilliant. A lot of times they ever sent him to Washington to speak on behalf of certain issues related to Yiddishkeit, but he was the one who was in charge of the school here. And we had a parent Shabbaton. We had about 20 people coming, registered, very excited. But the Eibishter made a nice, beautiful snowstorm right before Shabbos. And most of the people couldn't come. So only four people showed up. It was on the schedule that he's going to speak. Anyway, I called him up. I said, you're on the schedule to speak. Just come on, tell me the truth. How many people showed up? So he said, 24 people. I'm sorry, I'm not coming. Then he said, you can't shoot a fly with a cannon. If when you shoot a fly, you can do a fly swapper, but you don't take a cannon to shoot a fly. He meant to say that he is like a storm, but for four people, it's just not going to work. So, if you have an Nefesh Mamis that's a little meek and quiet, so Nefesh Mamis, you can't charge at him. But if it's an ox, yeah, that's the way to do it. So every Nefesh Mamis, this is a general category, but every Nefesh Mamis has its own personality, own characteristics. Yeah, and that's what the Torah says. There are different kind of karbanos. Bring your carbon. Your individual Nefesh Mamis has to be elevated. And he brings more. The truth is, there are a lot of beautiful things where Hasidus draws a parallel between the physical carbon and the internal carbon. So it goes on. Another parallel. Carbon, Agashmi, Shemevim Behem, Agashmi, is Al Gabi Mizbeach. That we bring carbon and we put the meat on the Mizbeach. There was a fire that came from above. So on the sheet that I gave out, there's another picture there. That's a picture of the Mizbeach. And on the Mizbeach it says 1, 2, there's different numbers. Look on the Mizbeach itself. You see 3 sort of piles of wood. One of them, it says, Amaracha G'doila, which means there's a big fire, and that's where they put the meat of the carbon. There's another one that says number 1. It's smaller, and that says Keteris. From there, they took the fire for the incense. They took fire from here to the small Mizbeach where they had incense. Then there's a known that says number 2. Look what it says under that. Eish min hashamayim. There was a fire that came down from Shemayim. When Shlomo Melech built the Beis Hamikdash, one of the miracles were that a fire appeared from Shemayim. I mean, there was a hot coal that had a flame to it, and there was a miraculous thing that came from heaven. So this was, he brought the wood. Why do you need to bring wood for if there's a fire anyway, which is miraculous and heavenly? And the answer is, the Gemara says that even though there was an H from Shemayim, we have to bring our own fire. So let's continue. Oh, your H Shalamayla, there was a fire that came from above. Could used to be Yuma, like it says in Gemara Yuma, Revutza Koari, that the fire was sitting on the Mizbeach and it looked like a lion. It doesn't say it here, but I remember there was a time, for some reason, that people publicized the Zohar, that the Zohar said that, and when Yidden were conducting themselves properly, it looked like a lion. When they didn't conduct themselves properly, it looked like a dog. But generally speaking, it looked like a lion. And it's interesting because the Beis Hamikdash itself is compared to a lion. And on top of that, there was images of lions on the curtains of the Beis Hamikdash. So a lion had very lot to do with the Beis Hamikdash. And one of the things is that it corresponded to the lion in the Merkava. Remember, we learned in the previous Maimer that in the chariot, there were angels which are called lions. And they're the source of all the lions down here. So this is looked like a lion. And Rashi says, these are Rashi's words, Yacheles, it means a fiery coal, Naflam in Hashemayim, it fell from heaven. I don't think they saw something fall. I think it means it just appeared on the Mizbeach. When in the days of Shlomo Melech, when he built the Beis Hamikdash, it says, Arya the Achal Kurbanim. It looked like there was a lion that was devouring the meat, devouring the carbon. The same as with a person. There's a fire that comes from above. What is that fire? The nefesh or the kiss is something which Hashem gives us. This is not something which we create. Hashem gives it to us. We're born with a nefesh or the kiss. And that nefesh or the kiss is on fire. On fire, fire in Chassidus and Torah represents love. We're on fire with love to Hashem. Like it says, its sparks are sparks of fire, the flame of Hashem. I'm going to stop here for a second. I just want to mention, could be a lot of you know this because this was all over on WhatsApps and internets and everywhere, but it's just in case you haven't heard. So first of all, even if nothing would be written, just the mere fact that Syria fell, which means that here's another dictatorship that went down. The Rebbe spoke about Russia dictatorship going down, and all the other countries that were dictatorships and went down. It's all signs of Mashiach, that the world is going towards, freedom and redemption and not dictatorship. So that alone would be enough, especially when we're dealing with someone who is an arch enemy of Yidden. Like I said before, that this was a key player in facilitating Hezbollah and Iran and all in the Middle East. This was the main place. That's where they kept the stockpiles of their ammunition. So the fact that they're out of the picture is like a miracle. And it's clearly a result of everything that happened, because before they couldn't do what they did because Hezbollah was fighting them. Now there's no Hezbollah, there's no Iran. Russia's busy with his own tsaris. So they just in 8 days, they went into Damascus and took over. I'm just wondering, I remember when in the Lebanon war, the Rebbe was begging and pleading, Israel went into Lebanon, the Rebbe was begging and pleading to go to the end. And the Rebbe said in 8 days they can get into Damascus. That was the words the Rebbe used, if I remember correctly. And the reason they didn't do it, the army was begging them to do it, but the politicians, we can't do it, the world will be upset. They got the same old problem. But everyone's publicizing a medrash, where the medrash says that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai heard from Eliyahu Navi, where he said to him that when the leader of Damascus will fall, that's when Mashiach will come, right after that. So we're living, these exciting things are happening.
Wow.
And I think officially, so far, these rebels have announced that they don't want to do what the other ones did. They want to leave everybody with freedom of religion, do whatever they want. Let's see.
About that. You're also terrorists.
What?
You're also terrorists.
Yeah, but they're elevated. These are animals that their sparks are being elevated. Now, someone publicized something else, but I don't know. But there was a person in Israel by the name of Boaz, Kali Boaz. He was very into Sheva Mitzvah Bnei Noach. He created an organization called 7 for 70. He would go mainly to the Arabs and speak to them about Sheva Mitzvah Bnei Noach. In 2014, there was a big gathering about Mashiach, and he said he wants to share something. That a few years ago, he met with a secret meeting with the head of the rebels, which is this guy who just did the job. And he spoke to him about Sheva Mitzvah Noach, and they had conversations. And at the end, they sat down together and wrote a letter to the Rebbe.
Wait, this rebel guy that just took
Yeah,
over?
yeah. And he wrote a letter to the Rebbe that he should succeed in overthrowing, Syria. And then he gave him a gift. The gift that he gave him was a Mashiach flag. And it said on it, "We want Mashiach now." And he promised him, that's what he said, he promised him that if he goes into Syria, he's going to put up that flag. So whoever has connection to him, please let him know he has to keep his promise.
I don't want to go to that.
2014 is when he shared this story, and he said it happened a few years earlier.
So it happened after the one.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
And they wrote a letter to the, that's incredible.
and what is a 7 to 70? It's like
7 mitzvahs for the 70
I
nations.
understand, but that's
Oh, no.
weird that it's like 770.
But there's a Lubavitcher guy that did this campaign. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so maybe tomorrow's shir will be in Yerushalayim. Let's continue.
The guy Boaz was who was the one that did 7 for 7?
Did what?
7 for 7 of Bob.
Well, that's cool. Yeah,
Oh,
Lubavitcher.
I thought you said that.
No, Lubavitcher.
That's pretty.
I had your grandson in my house. You know that. I had your grandson in my house.
Grandson works there.
Cohen.
Cohen was-
He's one who's in Westchester.
I am our mental for change.
Stop.
I
Must
flew in
be-
Westchester.
He must be